My name doesn't matter anymore. All you need to know is that I am a grandmother now, with gray hair tied back in a bun, wrinkled hands that tremble when I hold a teacup, and a heart that has carried more secrets than most people could ever bear. I have smiled at birthdays, cooked at holidays, and held babies in my arms as if the world was safe. But deep inside, I carried a truth that I never told anyone. Not my children, not my husband, not even my closest friend. And tonight, as I sit here alone with the sound of the clock ticking on my wall, I feel something pulling me, almost forcing me, to finally let it out. Maybe I am too old to keep hiding. Maybe God doesn't want me to leave this world with words unsaid. Maybe you, the one listening, are the person meant to hear it. I was only 18 years old when my life broke in half. 18, just a girl in the eyes of the world, but in those days you didn't get to be just a girl. You were expected to be a wife, a mother, and someone who knew how to carry burdens bigger than yourself. And I did all of it. I got married young, to a man who had more charm than stability. He made me laugh, but he couldn't make me feel safe. And yet, when I put that wedding ring on my finger, I believed love could carry us through anything. I was wrong. We lived in a small house, barely more than 2 rooms, with peeling paint on the walls and a roof that leaked when it rained. But I had my baby, my beautiful baby girl. She was my light, my reason to wake up, the tiny heart that beat stronger than my own. She was only 6 months old when the darkness came. My husband had lost his job. He started drinking, disappearing for days, coming back with excuses that tasted like lies. I was too young, too scared, and too in love with the idea of family to face the truth. I kept cooking, cleaning, rocking my baby in the night, pretending we were still whole. But the money ran out. The cupboards went empty, and my baby's little body grew thinner by the day. I remember one night, I was holding her in my arms and she wouldn't stop crying. Her cheeks were hot, her little lips dry. She was hungry. My body had stopped producing milk because I wasn't eating enough myself. I begged my husband to bring food, to do something, but he only shouted at me, slammed the door, and left again. That was the night I stared at my hand. The only thing of value I had left in the world was the ring on my finger. That golden band I swore I'd never take off. The symbol of love, of forever, of promises that had already been broken. I cried until I couldn't breathe. Then, at 18 years old, I slipped it off. My hand felt naked, my heart felt naked, but I knew I had no choice. The next morning, with my baby wrapped in a thin blanket, I walked into town. The pawn shop smelled like dust and metal, and the man behind the counter looked at me with eyes that seemed to know my shame. I held out my wedding ring with trembling fingers. He weighed it, examined it, and gave me money. It wasn't much, but it was enough to buy baby formula, some bread, and a little milk for myself. I will never forget that first bottle. The way my baby latched on, the way the crying finally stopped. I sat on the floor with tears pouring down my face, whispering to her that Mama would never let her go hungry again. But inside I felt broken. I had sold my marriage, my love, my future, for survival. No one knew. My husband never asked about the ring. Maybe he noticed, maybe he didn't care. My family never saw. I covered my hand, hid the truth, smiled when I had to. But from that day on, I carried a secret. That my baby lived because I gave up the only symbol of my worth in this world. Even now, after all these years, I still feel the weight of that choice. People see me as a grandmother who bakes pies, who laughs at family gatherings, who hugs too long. But they don't know that behind every hug, behind every laugh, there is a memory of that desperate 18-year-old girl, standing in a pawn shop with a baby in her arms. I ask you now, if you were in my place, if you were only 18 with a starving baby and nothing left but the ring on your finger, would you have done it? Would you have sold the last piece of love to save a life? Or would you have held on to pride, even if it meant risking your child's future? Because I did it. And I never told anyone until today. But that wasn't the end of the story. No, that was just the beginning. Because when you make one sacrifice, life tests you with another. And soon I would be asked to give up even more than a ring. I would face choices that no girl, no woman, no mother should ever have to face. And those choices, they would haunt me for the rest of my life. I thought selling that ring would be the hardest choice of my life, but I was wrong. That was only the doorway into years of sacrifice, secrets, and pain I buried so deep that even my children never knew the truth. After that day, things didn't magically get better. My husband came and went like a shadow, Sometimes kind, sometimes cruel, but always unreliable. I learned quickly that if my baby was going to survive, I could not depend on him. I had to depend on myself. I started cleaning houses. At 18, I scrubbed floors until my knees bled. Washed other people's dishes while my baby sat in a basket beside me. Sometimes the women I worked for looked at me with pity, sometimes with judgment. They saw a too young girl with hollow cheeks working for pennies, with a baby who cried more than she laughed. But they didn't see the fire inside me. They didn't know that I had already given up my wedding ring to keep that little heart beating. But poverty has a way of chasing you no matter how fast you run. The winter that followed was the coldest I can remember. The wind cut through the cracks in the walls, and no matter how many blankets I wrapped around my baby, her tiny lips still trembled. I prayed every night, "Lord, please don't let her get sick. Please don't take her from me." One night she began to cough. It was sharp, dry, and it shook her whole little body. I panicked. I held her close, rocked her back and forth, whispered every prayer I could remember. But the cough didn't stop. By morning her forehead was burning, her little chest rising and falling so fast it terrified me. I ran to the clinic in town, clutching her against me, begging them to help. The nurse looked at me with tired eyes and said, "The medicine costs $5. $5. It might as well have been 500. I didn't have it. I didn't even have 5 cents. My knees went weak. I thought of turning back, thought of giving up, but then I remembered the pawn shop. I remembered that I had nothing left, except a small necklace my mother had given me before she died. It wasn't worth much, just a thin chain with a tiny locket, but it was all I had left of her. My last memory, my last connection. I held it in my hand, and my heart screamed not to do it. That necklace was my mother's touch, her love, her blessing. But my baby was gasping for air in my arms. Her tiny hand clutched my dress, her eyes filled with tears. She couldn't even cry out loud. So I ran. I ran to the pawn shop again, burst through the door, and slammed the necklace on the counter. The man looked at me like he had been expecting me, like he knew I'd be back. He gave me just enough for the medicine. When the nurse placed that bottle of syrup in my hands, I swear it felt like gold. I gave my baby the medicine drop by drop, prayed over every swallow, and by the next morning the fever had broken. She was breathing easier. She was alive. I sat on the floor with her in my lap, rocking back and forth, crying into her soft hair. I whispered, "Mama gave her necklace to save you, and I gave it away to save you too. Don't you ever forget, little one. You were always worth everything." But here's the part no one knows. That wasn't the last sacrifice. Life seemed determined to strip me bare, to test me again and again. And each time I had to choose between keeping something precious or saving the one thing I loved more than myself, my child. My husband came home days later, smelling of whiskey, his shirt wrinkled and stained. He barely looked at us. I wanted to scream, to tell him that I had sold my ring, sold my mother's necklace, worked myself to the bone, all while he was out wasting what little we had. But I didn't scream. I didn't say a word. I just held my baby tighter. And then one evening, when the baby was almost a year old, he came home with something in his eyes I had never seen before. Fear. Real raw fear. He told me he had gotten into trouble with some men. He owed money. More than we could ever repay. And if he didn't give it to them soon, he said, they would come after him. Or worse, after us. I felt the blood drain from my face. I was just 18, holding a baby on my hip, and my husband was telling me that danger was about to knock on our door. And that night, as I lay awake, listening to every sound outside, I realized something that shattered me even more than selling my wedding ring. I was not just poor. I was not just abandoned. I was not just unloved. I was unsafe. And I had a choice to make. Do I stay, hoping he can fix his mess, risking that one day those men would come knocking, and my baby would be caught in the crossfire? Or do I leave, with nothing but my baby and the clothes on our backs, stepping into a world that would chew us up and spit us out? I can still hear the ticking of that clock in the silence of the night, as I held my baby against me and asked myself the question that would decide the rest of my life. And that night, I made a decision, one that would change everything. The night I decided to leave, the world outside felt colder than I had ever known. Every creak of the floorboards, every whistle of the wind through the cracks in the walls made me feel like someone was already watching us. My baby slept in my arms, her tiny breaths warm against my neck, while my husband lay passed out in the other room, a bottle rolling from his hand to the floor. I looked at him, at the man who was supposed to be my partner, my protector, and all I felt was emptiness. I had no wedding ring, no necklace, no family nearby to run to, no money hidden under the mattress. All I had was my baby, my courage, and the desperate pounding of my heart telling me, go now or lose everything. I wrapped my daughter in the thickest blanket I had and slipped on my worn shoes. I took one last look around that house, the broken window, the cracked walls, the place where my dreams had died. I didn't say goodbye. Some places don't deserve a farewell. The streets were silent, only the echo of my footsteps carrying me forward. Every shadow looked like danger, every corner like a trap. I walked fast, clutching my baby close, whispering to her, Mama's got you, don't be scared, Mama's got you. But deep inside I was terrified. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. The first place I thought of was the church. It was small, with peeling paint and crooked steps, but it was a place where I had once lit candles with my mother. Maybe, just maybe, God would open a door for me there. I pushed the heavy wooden door open and slipped inside. The silence hit me like a blanket. The air smelled of wax and dust, and the moonlight shone through the stained glass windows, painting the floor with colors. I sat in the back pew, clutching my baby, rocking her as she stirred in her sleep. I whispered prayers through my tears. Lord, I don't have anything left to give. I gave my ring, I gave my mother's necklace, I gave every piece of myself. Please don't let me lose her too. Please show me what to do. Hours passed and I must have drifted off because the next thing I knew, the door creaked open. My heart jumped. I thought it was him, thought he had found me. But instead, an older woman walked in. She was dressed in simple clothes, her hair tied back, her face kind but tired. She stopped when she saw me, this young girl huddled in the pews with a baby in her arms. She came closer and asked softly, Child, what are you doing here? I wanted to lie, to hide, but something about her voice made the truth spill out. I told her everything. The hunger, the pawn shop, the sickness, the drinking, the debt, the fear. My voice broke as I said, I can't go back, but I don't know where else to go. She sat beside me and took my hand. Her palms were rough like she had worked hard all her life, but her touch was gentle. She said, Then you won't go back. Not tonight. You'll come with me. Her name was Mrs. Carter, and I believe to this day that God sent her to me. She lived on the edge of town, in a small farmhouse with chickens in the yard and bread always baking in the oven. She didn't have much, but she gave me what she had. A bed, food, and safety for my baby. For the first time in months I slept without fear. I held my baby in my arms and didn't wake at every sound, didn't wonder if men would come knocking at the door. But peace doesn't last long when secrets are chasing you. 2 days later, as I was hanging laundry on the line behind Mrs. Carter's house, I saw him. My husband. He was standing at the edge of the property, his eyes dark, his jaw tight. He didn't shout, didn't come running, he just stood there watching. My blood turned to ice. I clutched my baby and ran inside, bolting the door. Mrs. Carter asked what was wrong, and when I told her, she didn't flinch. She simply said, He won't take you. Not while I'm here. She stood by the window with a broomstick in her hand like it was a sword, her old frame steady with courage. But I knew it wasn't over. He wanted me back, not out of love but because losing me meant losing control. And men like him didn't like to lose control. That night I lay awake, listening to the crickets outside, holding my baby tighter than ever. My mind raced with questions. Could I really stay here forever, hiding like a fugitive? Could I raise my child in someone else's home, always afraid of the past finding me? Or did I need to face him once and for all, even if it meant risking everything? My heart ached with fear and uncertainty. But one thing was clear. I had already given up everything, my ring, my necklace, my pride. The only thing left to lose was my freedom. And if I let him take that from me, then all my sacrifices would mean nothing. So that night I made another promise to myself. I whispered into the darkness, into the soft hair of my sleeping baby. I will fight. I don't care what it takes. I don't care if the world turns its back on me. You will never grow up in fear. You will never live the life I did. I'll make sure of it. And with that promise, I stepped into the next chapter of my life. A chapter that would test me in ways I never imagined. A chapter that would demand even greater sacrifices. A chapter that would reveal just how far a mother will go when she has nothing left to lose. Because the night he returned, the night he tried to take me back, was the night I learned what it truly meant to fight for survival. The night was heavy with silence. Even the crickets seemed to know something was about to happen. I sat by the small window of Mrs. Carter's house, rocking my baby, trying to calm the storm in my heart. I could feel it coming, the confrontation I had been running from. My hands trembled, but my spirit was set. I had promised my baby I would never let fear own me again. Then I heard it. A knock. Slow. Hard. Certain. Mrs. Carter, who had been knitting by the fire, froze. She looked at me, her face pale but fierce. "It's him," I whispered, my throat dry. She nodded once and stood up, her frail body seeming to grow taller in that moment. The knock came again, louder this time. My baby stirred in my arms, whimpering. I pressed my lips to her forehead, whispering, "Shoo, Mama's here." My chest burned with both fear and fire. Mrs. Carter opened the door just a crack, her old eyes glaring into the night. "She doesn't belong to you anymore," she said firmly. "You need to leave." His voice came like gravel. "She's my wife. She comes with me. And the baby too." I stepped forward, my knees weak but my voice steady. "No. Not anymore. You lost the right to call me your wife the moment you raised your hand against me. You lost the right when you chose your bottle over our child. You lost the right when you broke the vows you swore on our wedding day." He sneered, his shadow filling the doorway. "Don't make me take her by force." For a moment the room seemed to freeze. Mrs. Carter clutched the broomstick, her hands shaking but ready. My baby cried in my arms, her small fists trembling. And me, I felt a fire in my chest that I didn't know I had. "You won't touch us," I said, my voice stronger now, louder than I thought possible. "You've taken everything from me. My ring, my home, my peace, but you will never take her. I would rather die here tonight than go back to you." He stepped forward, but then something happened I didn't expect. Mrs. Carter raised her voice, sharp as thunder. "Leave now, or the whole town will know what you've done. You think no one will listen to a young girl? They will. I'll make sure of it." His eyes darted to mine, cold and desperate. For a long moment he just stared at me, like he couldn't believe I was standing there defying him. Then, with a curse under his breath, he turned and stormed into the night. The door slammed shut. My knees buckled. I collapsed into the chair, sobbing into my baby's blanket, clutching her so tightly I thought I might never let go. Mrs. Carter sat beside me, her hand on my shoulder, her own eyes wet with tears. "It's over," she whispered. "You're safe now." But I knew it wasn't truly over. Men like him didn't just disappear. Fear doesn't vanish overnight. But something inside me had changed that night. I had found my voice. I had found my strength. I had faced him, and I had not broken. The next morning, Mrs. Carter and I went to the authorities. For the first time, I told the truth out loud to people who could help me. I showed them the bruises, I told them about the nights without food, the pawning of my ring, the threats. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. And slowly they believed me. It wasn't easy. There were courtrooms, questions, whispers from neighbors who didn't understand. But step by step, I built a new life. Mrs. Carter stood by me through it all. She became like the mother I had lost, the family I thought I'd never have again. I worked. I saved. I studied at night while my baby slept. I built a home, not fancy, not big, but safe. Every time I looked at my daughter, I told myself, this is why. This is who I gave up everything for. This is the reason I sold my ring, my last treasure, and walked away from the life I thought I was bound to. Years passed. My baby grew into a young woman, strong and full of light. She never knew the hunger, the fear, the bruises I carried. And that was my victory. I gave her the childhood I never had. And now, sitting here with gray hair and shaking hands, I tell you this story because I never want it to be forgotten. I never want anyone to think that silence is the answer, or that giving up your dreams means you've lost. Sometimes sacrifice is the most powerful proof of love. Sometimes survival is the bravest thing a woman can do. I was only 18 when I gave up everything, when I sold my wedding ring for medicine, when I chose to walk into the unknown with nothing but faith. And I have never regretted it. Because that decision saved my daughter's life. And in saving her, it saved me too. So if you are listening to me now, wondering if you are strong enough, wondering if you can survive what feels unbearable, I want you to hear me. You can. You are stronger than you know. And one day you will look back just like me and say, I never told anyone until today, but I survived. And it made me who I am.